Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things and welcome to another video. And today, welcome to my Jane Austen July TBR. And when I say this is my Jane Austen July TBR, what I actually mean is this is my Jane Austen July pile of possibilities, because there are definitely way too many things on this list. I'm not going to manage to read all of these things in the month of July. However, I will read some of them, and I'm looking forward to all of them at some point. So let me go through my far too long list. I'm not quite sure how much I'm going to get read in July. I've got a relatively busy month, but some of my busyness also comes with doing some redecorating, which is good audiobook time. So we'll see. But yes, let me go through the challenges for Jane Austen July and what I'm reading slash what I might read for each one. So challenge number one of Jane Austen July, as it is every year, is to read one of Jane Austen's main 6 novels. And I'm going to be reading Emma, which is the group read this year. And I'm really looking forward to reading Emma. I'm not going to be reading this physical book. I'm going to be listening to Emma on audiobook. Jane Austen's novels just work so well for me on audiobook. I think the last time I listened to Emma, I listened to the Juliet Stevenson audiobook. I think I might try a different one this time, just for fun. I really like the Juliet Stevenson audiobook, but I think it might be interesting to try a different one. And there's an audiobook on Audible narrated by Jenny Agutter, so I might give that a try. And yeah, really looking forward to reading Emma. I think that will be the only Jane Austen novel I read this year. Most Jane Austen Julys, I read 2 Jane Austen books, reread 2 Jane Austen novels. But as Emma is a bit longer, and as there are so many other books on my list this year, I think I'll probably just stick to Emma. However, I will read something else by Jane Austen that isn't one of her main 6 novels, which is the second prompt for Jane Austen July. And I think what I might read is this. So this is a very beautiful little edition of some of Jane Austen's juvenilia. So this is called Austen's Couples Early Romances, and it contains 4 of Jane Austen's juvenilia short stories: Jack and Alice, Frederick and Elfrida, Edgar and Emma, and Henry and Eliza. I have read all of these before, and I really enjoy all of them, especially Jack and Alice, which is just like my favourite thing that little teenage Jane Austen wrote. It's so funny and just delightful. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. I found this beautiful edition in a bookshop lately and thought, yes, I have to own this because it's so pretty. And yeah, it's only very little. It won't take me very long. So I will read this for the second challenge of Jane Austen July. The third challenge of Jane Austen July is to read a non-fiction work about Jane Austen or her time. And I have 3 books that I've picked out for this prompt, all of which I am really keen to read. So hopefully I will read all of them, but that is quite a lot of non-fiction in a month for me, so we will see. But the first one that I'm so excited to read, and will definitely be reading in July, is this. This is Jane Austen's Bookshelf. The Women Writers Who Shaped a Legend by Rebecca Romney. So this is a non-fiction book that is all about the authors that influenced Jane Austen. So I think there's a few different writers who are explored. So Frances Burney, Anne Radcliffe, Charlotte Lennox, Hannah More, Charlotte Smith, Elizabeth Inchbold, Hester Lynch Thial Piozzi, and Mariah Edgeworth. So I have read some books from some of those authors before, some of them I haven't even heard of. So I'm really, really excited to hear what Rebecca Romney has to say about these authors. And I'm just really, really looking forward to reading this non-fiction book. I've heard amazing things about it. I'm hopefully going to be buddy reading this with Ros from Scally Landing About the Books and Charlotte from Queenie Reads. And we spoke about that quite a while ago now. It's probably about a month ago now. I should probably check in with them about that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading this. I think this will be fantastic. Another non-fiction book that I'm very excited for and pretty convinced I will love is this. This is Love and Marriage in the Age of Jane Austen by Rory Muir. So I read his previous non-fiction book, Gentlemen of Uncertain Fortune, last Jane Austen July. Well, I think I finished it in August, but I thought it was fantastic. A really, really interesting non-fiction book. Just the kind of history I love, which is social history, you know, with a bit of economic and cultural history thrown in, and a history book that is quite reliant on primary sources and quotes a lot from primary sources and uses individual examples a lot and uses the micro to explore the macro. I just love that kind of history book. That's my preferred kind of history book. So having loved that book so much, I'm really excited for Rory Moore's new book, which is Love and Marriage in the Age of Jane Austen. So I guess this book is about love and marriage in the age of Jane Austen. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think it'll be fantastic. But the final non-fiction book I have for this challenge, which I'm really looking forward to, it's a book I was sent as a review copy earlier this year. This is a Jane Austen year, celebrating 250 years of Jane Austen. So this is a non-fiction sort of coffee table book put together partly by Jane Austen's house at Chawton, the museum that's there. And There's like lots of different kinds of things within it. So there are a lot of pictures, but also there are some pages that have more text, and it kind of goes through the year and talks about various things relating to Jane Austen. So I think this will be really fun and really interesting, and it'll also be quite a different Jane Austen July book. I think maybe what I will try and do is like read a section a day and read it over the course of the month. That might be a nice thing to do. The next prompt for Jane Austen July is to read a retelling of a Jane Austen book or a work of historical fiction set in Jane Austen's time. And I have way too many choices for this prompt, so I will definitely not be reading all of these, but they all sound so great, so I do want to read some of them. So firstly, I've picked out 2 modern retellings of Emma that I'm quite keen to read, and that might be fun to read this year, as Emma is our group read. So there is Emmett by Elsie Rosen, which is a YA queer retelling of Emma about a young man called Emmett. It looks really fun. I'm looking forward to this one. And then there's also If I Loved You Less by Amna Qureshi, which is another Emma retelling, modern Emma retelling, and I really like the title and the cover, and I feel like this will be interesting. So I will hopefully read one or both of these in the month of July, but we will see. Talking of modern retellings, I also really want to try and read This Motherless Land by Nikki May, which is a modern retelling of Mansell Park. I've heard really good things about this, and I think this will be a really fascinating read. So this book is set in Lagos and Somerset and follows a young woman called Funke who moves from Nigeria to England after the death of her family, and moves in with her cousins and a family who neglect her, as Fanny Price does in Mansell Park. So I'm very, very curious to read this one. I think it'll be really, really interesting, and I love Mansell Park so much, and it's so underrated. So I'm just really looking forward to seeing how Nikki May engages with Mansell Park. Another retelling, this time a historical one, that I'm very excited to read this Jane Austen July is The Perils of Lady Catherine de Bourgh by Claudia Gray. So this is the 3rd book in the Miss Tilney and Mr. Darcy mystery series, in which Mr. Darcy's son and Mr. Tilney's daughter solve murder mysteries together, and it's just delightful. I've loved the previous 2 books. They're so fun. I listened to the previous 2 books on audiobook. My library has the 3rd one on audiobook, so I put a hold on it. I'm really excited to read it. Actually, I feel like my hold might have come in. Yes, I was correct. My hold did come in, and the book is due back to the library on the 6th of July. So I guess I will be reading that first, and very promptly at the beginning of Jane Austen July. I'm really looking forward to reading this one because I really enjoyed the previous 2, and I think it'll be good fun. And it's a nice little like Jane Austen July tradition now to read one of Claudia Gray's mysteries. And then moving away from retellings of Jane Austen's books to retellings of Jane Austen's life, a new book coming out in August that I have a proof of here is 6 Weeks by the Sea by Paula Byrne, which is a novel about Jane Austen falling in love at the seaside. So there is a sort of like family myth within the Austen family, that Jane Austen met a young man at the seaside one summer, fell in love with him, and then, you know, things didn't work out. And this novel takes up that myth and explores it. And Paula Byrne is a non-fiction writer, and I've read several of her non-fiction books on Jane Austen, which I found really, really fascinating. So I'm very curious to read her novel. I am really hoping to enjoy it because I have liked her non-fiction and because I love Jane Austen and books about Jane Austen. However, I will say that Miss Austen by Jill Hornby also engages with that myth, that like Austen family myth about Jane Austen falling in love at the seaside. And I'm so emotionally attached to what Jill Hornby does with that myth in this book that I kind of feel like I'll read this book and I'll be like, but that's not what happened. Jill Hornby told me it wasn't. And I obviously know that both of these novels are novels and they can coexist, but also I feel like I'm going to be slightly biased against this story because of my great love for Miss Austen. And talking of Miss Austen, I recently watched the adaptation of Miss Austen and I loved it so much. It was so good. And as I was watching it, like every second I just kept thinking, I want to reread Miss Austen. I want to reread Miss Austen. I love this book so much. I want to read it again. I read Miss Austen back in 2020. So it's been 5 years and I loved it so much and I really want to reread it. So I might reread Miss Austen this Jane Austen July. Am I actually going to do that? I have so many other books on this list, but I really do want to. So I'm gonna see how my audiobook listening goes, and I might try and get hold of an audiobook of Miss Austen and listen to it, which would be nice. I always really like rereading on audiobook if I read a book physically the first time, because then it's a slightly different experience, which is quite a fun way to reread something. And I just kind of want to be back in this world because I love Miss Austen so much. So we'll see. However, talking of Jill Hornby, she does have a new novel out, The Elopement, which has just come out, and I've just got a copy. And I also really want to read this in July. Do I really know anything about this? Not really. It's by Jill Hornby. It's about a tangential side character in Jane Austen's life. I'm there. So this book is about the stepdaughter of Fanny Knight, who was one of Jane Austen's nieces, and about this stepdaughter's elopement, I guess. I'm very excited. I just love Jill Hornby so much, so I'm sure I will love this. As I said, I have way too many books on this pile of possibilities. However, one book I definitely will read in Jane Austen July is this. This is The Grand Sophie by Georgette Heyer. So this is the pick for July for my historical fiction book club that I run over on my Patreon. I thought for Jane Austen July, it'd be fun to read a Georgette Heyer, and we all voted and read lots of different summaries and got recommendations from other people in the group and decided on The Grand Sophie. I have never read any Georgette Heyer before. She is obviously like well known for sort of being the mother of Regency romance as a genre, I guess. And I'm quite excited to read this. I got this out the library and it is a large print copy, but I actually kind of love a large print copy. It's nice and easy on the eyes. So this book is about a young woman called Sophie who goes to stay with her aunt's family and like takes them all by surprise, I guess. I kind of don't want to know more than that. And then I know I definitely have way too many picks already for this prompt. However, I do have one other short, fun thing that I want to read in Jane Austen July that kind of fits into this, which is this. So my mum gave me this for my birthday. She found it somewhere online. It is the Meritan Gazette. So someone has written like a Meritan newspaper for the start of Pride and Prejudice with, you know, information about the fact that Netherfield is let at last, and like the fact that the militia are coming to Meritan and various other things. And I just feel like this is going to be super fun. This is only going to take me like an hour to read, but I've been saving it for Jane Austen July. Then the fifth challenge, the final reading challenge for Jane Austen July, is to read a book by a contemporary of Jane Austen. So someone who was writing and publishing at roughly the same time as Jane Austen, you know, give or take a few decades, it's up to you. And I have quite a few picks for this. Well, I have a few possibilities for this, but I'm also kind of hoping that Rebecca Romney's book, Jane Austen's Bookshelf, will slightly guide my reading here. I think it is very possible that I will read about a book in that non-fiction book and be so excited to read it that this TBR will go out the window and I'll read one of them instead, but we will see. One thing I would like to read for this prompt is a play. I've had some fun reading some Georgian plays the last few years, and one thing I wanted to get to last year and didn't quite get around to was A Trip to Scarborough by Sheridan from 1777, so I think I'm going to try and read that. Plays are always pretty quick to read, and it's a nice, enjoyable way to spend an afternoon. And then I found myself an audiobook of The Mysteries of Udolpho, because I feel like maybe it's finally time that I read The Mysteries of Udolpho, which is a gothic novel by Anne Radcliffe that is meant to be silly and wonderful. It's relatively long, but I've got an audiobook, and as I said, I'm hoping to do some like decorating home renovation stuff in July, so if I am spending lots of time stripping wallpaper and painting walls, then I will get through lots of audiobooks, potentially. I've read one thing by Anne Radcliffe before, which was The Castles of Athlin and Dunbayne, which I thought was fine, but I didn't have many strong opinions of it. But I also feel like I read it because it was the shortest Anne Radcliffe I could find, rather than because it was one that had come highly recommended. So I feel like I ought to go to The Mysteries of Udolpho instead. Another book, though, that I am really keen to read, which I might listen to an audiobook. I found an audiobook of it, but I also got the physical book out of the library, and I will see how I go. So this is The Female Quixote by Charlotte Lennox, which I've heard really, really good things about. It's from slightly before Jane Austen's time. I think it's from the 1850s. We know that Jane Austen read this and loved this book, and was influenced by this. I think Charlotte Lennox is one of the authors that Rebecca Romney talks about, and I just feel like this might be a book that I'll find really interesting, so I've picked it up. We will see. So I would like to read those three. I think it's very possible I will pick up something else instead or as well for this challenge, but as I said, I think I'm going to let Jane Austen's Bookshelf guide my reading, so yeah, we will see. And then of course the final two prompts for Jane Austen July are watching prompts. So the first is to watch a direct screen adaptation of a Jane Austen book, and I will be watching the 2020 Emma film, which is our group watch this year. I'm really looking forward to rewatching this. I really, really love this film. I would kind of like to watch some other Emma retellings as well, but I just think the chance of me having the time to sit down and watch the many hours of the 2009 miniseries is quite slim. I would love to, it's a wonderful adaptation, but I'm just not sure I'll have the time, but we will see. And then the final prompt for Jane Austen July is to watch a modern screen adaptation or a screen retelling of a Jane Austen book. And I think I might rewatch Emma Approved because I love it and I kind of want to. And I just think it's a wonderful interpretation of Emma. However, there is another film that's come out recently, a French film called Jane Austen Wrecked My Life, and it does look super fun. So if I can find somewhere to watch that, I might watch that, but I will see how I go. So there we go. That is my Jane Austen July pile of possibilities. Way too many things for me to read in 1 month, but you know, I like to have ambitions. I'm looking forward to all of these books, or, you know, whichever of these books I get to. Do let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books, if there's any you think should be, you know, right at the top of my pile of possibilities. Otherwise, do let me know if you're taking part in Jane Austen July and what you're planning to read. If you have a TBR video, do let me know. Probably don't link to it because YouTube doesn't really like links in comments, but if you tell me that you have one, I will click on your channel and go and watch it, because I always love seeing what other people have picked out for Jane Austen July. So that's all for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.